What's up, guys? Welcome to Go Viral episode number 2, Influencer Marketing Pro Tips. Today, I'm going to be covering the topic of micro-influencers. Lots of startup founders have been asking me, how do we best work with the influencers? We've heard about the term of micro-influencers. We just never worked with them and don't know how to approach them, don't know what they're going to do and how much they're going to charge, and how to pick the best influencers for my brand. So these are all questions that startup founders ask me about. Today, I'm going to be covering 5 pro tips you need to consider before working with a micro-influencer. So the concept of influencers has been around for a long time. However, the concept of micro-influencer has just been really heated up recently. A lot of people are talking about it. So the idea behind it is that if you're working with a larger influencer and paying that person a whole lot for a campaign, is probably going to be as effective as working with 10 different micro influencers. Each of them has a smaller followership. Then the combined power of the micro influencers is probably going to be as effective as if you pay the bigger influencer a whole lot. So it is definitely a trend, and startup founders, brand owners love working with micro influencers. Working with them is not that easy. We've had a lot of trial and error in the past, so I'd love to share with you guys a few things that we had as our takeaway working with micro influencers, so you could take those advice and implement it to your marketing strategy. All right, let's jump right into it. If you like our episode today, please give us a thumbs up down below and leave us a comment with any questions that you might have for micro influencer marketing, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. All right. So tip number 1, engagement rate. I've mentioned about this in our past episode. So marketing campaign is a very creative process. So by launching it, you need to inject it with a lot of creativity, and you can't omit the fact that you need to look at the numbers as well. So first tip for you is that it is important to look at the numbers of how the micro-influencer is performing, meaning what is their engagement rate. All right, so my golden rule right here is my 3% rule. So I love to work with influencers who have an engagement rate on Instagram of 3% or more. A lot of times that you see somebody has 1 million followers and they're not getting a ton of likes. Some of the influencers in the past, if they started their Instagram account 5 years ago, anybody would follow anybody back in the days. Therefore, they used to get a lot of traction. But it doesn't mean that everybody that's following them is loyal to their personal brand. So be careful out there. You want to make sure that the followers love what the influencers is posting. All right, let me give you an example. If an influencer has about 10K followers, then 3% rule will apply to 3% of 10K, which is 300. And so this influencer is supposed to have 300 or more likes per post basis. All right, so if you're looking at an influencer who has 10,000 followers and has a like of, on an average, you just scroll through their feed, and if they're getting more than 300 likes per post, then that's the type of influencers that you want to work with, meaning that this influencer is surpassing the 3% rule. All right. Tip number 2, you want to find influencers who take responsibilities seriously. So we've had experience working with influencers in the past who has gotten our free sample, took our payment, and not delivering on time. So you just work off intros from internet, and you never know if this person is trustworthy, right? So you wanted to use your best judgment to find if they do have a community around them and they tag other people, so there's also other people that you could fall back to if the influencer is not performing the job that they're supposed to be. So I'm not saying all influencers will do this, but we did run into some influencers who were not able to deliver and also blocked our account. So these are type of people that you do want to avoid. I know they all look glorious from the outside, but do have an interview, try to call them, ask them questions, whether or not they can deliver, what type of content they want to deliver, and just kind of analyze them from their tonality and whether or not, ask a few questions to see if they're really serious and are responsible people. So that is tip number 2. Tip number 3, a binding agreement. It is just so easy to say, okay, I'll take a free sample. Okay, I'll take a payment from you. Then it's very hard to fulfill that. So make sure your influencer will fulfill your terms. Be sure to draft the contract. You wanted to clearly lay out in a binding agreement for the influencer to sign and telling them what exactly you want them to deliver by what time. We've had a lot of experience in the past that we just reach out to an influencer from a direct message and it ends up that we're sending out our samples and they don't end up delivering. So the influencers who are more willing to sign a contract are the influencers who are probably more responsible and will actually deliver. There are some influencers who decline to sign a contract because they think it's too much of a hassle for them. Don't even consider working with them, because if they don't even want to sign a contract, why would they perform any job for you, right? So you don't want to end up chasing behind their back, asking them, when are you going to really do it? When are you going to post our product? So we've done that a lot in the past. So the only solution to have this resolved is to have a detailed contract laid out for them to sign it. Once they sign it, you're ready to ship your product or you're ready to send the payment. All right. So we do have a sample contract that I'm probably gonna just link it down below so you could download it and use it. This is just an example, but you can take a look and draft your own if you want. Be sure to consult a legal attorney who can actually write something that's suitable for your product or business. All right, but it's a good guideline to start with. Be sure that every single one of your influencers that work with you do sign a contract. All right. Tip number 4, approve the influencer's content before they post it. It's better to work with an influencer with a co-developed marketing campaign versus a campaign entirely developed by the influencer. So you both can combine your creativity together. So influencers are the world's most creative individuals who can tell the most beautiful stories about your product or business. A lot of startup founders are asking me if they should just leave it for the individual to decide on the content. My advice will be yes, but always check on them and make sure that what they deliver is something that is within your expectations. In the past, we've had influencers who, tag us as one of the 10 sponsors that they tag in one post. So that's not something that you want to do because that post becomes very commercialized. So in order to pick a good influencer to work with you, you have to make sure that the influencer has organic interest in your product or service so they can genuinely tell their audience about their experience. That's another thing. So make sure that you co-create or you combine conquer with the influencer, making sure that the final product that you guys develop is something that fits each other's objectives. All right, that's tip number 4. Tip number 5. This is probably the most important tip of all tips. Work with your influencers for a longer commitment. The reason why you want to work with your influencers longer term is because we don't live in the 1980s anymore when you see something in a TV commercial and you buy it right away. Today, every one of us is exposed to probably 100 times more material and information every day, and you get drawn into all type of information, and it's really hard to convert anybody into that one sale. So eventually what you want to expect your influencers to do is to kind of help you warm up their audience, so they go from acknowledging your brand to knowing your brand to trusting your brand, and eventually they're ready to buy, and finally they're purchasing your product. Okay, so that's kind of like the journey or milestones that every buyer should be going through these days. From if you're promoting them from an influencer channel, then influencers have to kind of constantly give your brand a shout out. So at the end of the day, you're hoping towards the end, you're going to be able to get some good traffic and sales. So at the beginning, if you don't get a lot of traction or sales, don't get discouraged and don't just say, oh, influencer marketing doesn't work. But in fact, it does work. Sometimes that you are probably not getting a ton of sales or traffic at the beginning, that's fine. After one shout out, the customers of the influencer already know about your brand. So in the future, if they do it again every week or every 2 weeks, they're gonna eventually be able to bring a real good quality customers over to your site. So it really depends on how many times and how frequent you want the you wanted to set up in your contract with the influencers. Usually I ask them to do 4 or 8 in the time span of like 3 months or 6 months. So influencer will be able to kind of warm up their audience and be able to kind of like have them familiarize with their brand. Then eventually what you're hoping for at the end is that, you know, you're going to convert to a few sales that way from influencers. And even if the influencers help you convert to some kind of sales at the beginning, and the more shout outs they give to you in the future is going to really help your customer retention as well, because the follower who ended up buying your product probably still see your product again from the influencer and that helps them reassuring that they bought something right? So do work with influencers for the longer term. Don't get discouraged if at the beginning that you're not seeing results. And if you're working with 10 different influencers at the same timeline, and all of them are talking about your brand. And that's a really powerful network effect that you're kind of affecting that same community, and all of them are seeing, you know, people that they love are posting the same stuff. The accounts that they trust are using this product or using this service, therefore they wanted to go ahead and try it again. So the more touches you have, the better it is. Have a long-term commitment with your influencers is the way to go. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching today's episode. I hope you all learned something new about micro-influencer marketing. And if you do have questions, please comment down below. And I'll be so excited to see what you guys are working on. I'll see you guys in the next episode.